Well, hello, welcome to the trade setup right here on BloombergQuint. It's Thursday morning, the day before the long weekend, and therefore it'll be important to digest all the cues that we have, because this is arguably the next 6 or 7 hours are the last hours before we have a long weekend coming up, and lots could happen over the long weekend as well. First, news around the world, and not just coronavirus updates, but some economic updates as well. So first, of course, the global cases topped the 1.5 million count. So that is known, but it's important to highlight that that large number has now been eclipsed as well. A few days ago, we were talking about 1 million. Now we are at 1.5. So the cases seem to multiply at a fast clip. Prime Minister Modi has apparently said that the nationwide lockdown will not be lifted in one go on April 14. This is Biju Janata Dal's Pinaki Mishra who had said this yesterday, and just bringing that update. Maybe a few other updates would have come in or would come in as well, and it'll be important to assess the veracity of that, because that will have some economic impact and sentiment impact as well. Keep in mind, what is also happening is that the government is likely to move on multiple fronts as far as tax relaxations go, as far as tax rebates go. I think there's a story on BloombergQuint as well which speaks about how the income tax refunds, etc., would all be done at a faster clip. So all of those factors put together in order to help the people tide over the coronavirus crisis in a slightly better fashion. Money in the bank certainly helps. So it's an important story, an important set of stories that you can log on to BloombergQuint and try and read more about. Now, over and above that, a couple of factors that are coming in terms of world news. One, the Financial Times is reporting that Argentina has postponed payments on $10 billion worth of local law debt. This is important. It's not necessarily a fallout of only coronavirus, but Argentina has had problems of its own. And what happens if multiple issues hit the world at the same time? Argentina is not as large a country and economy in the world scheme of things, but it is large enough, and therefore important to take notice of this development. And lastly, something that probably helped the US markets yesterday, Bernie Sanders has dropped out of the US presidential race. So now it is arguably Joe Biden versus Donald Trump, and it will be an important one. Imagine we're having all of this in an election year in the US. Speaking of the US, the markets did reasonably okay for themselves yesterday, so a bit of a bump up, maybe in part due to this as well, that Bernie Sanders is out, and therefore whoever the winner is, whether a Democrat or a Republican, the policies which are pro-corporate may not necessarily change too much. Bernie Sanders would have been a different kettle of fish. The US futures, of course, are pointing towards a muted start in the session. But keep in mind, as a result of the up move that we've seen in the US markets, the mother market is back into bull market territory. I think these definitions probably need to change, really. There has been a bit of an uptick, yes, from the lows of, and not a bit of an uptick, a 20% uptick. So from being in a bear market and talks about a recession going on, the US markets technically is back into a bull market territory. Well, what is also in focus this week are the weekly jobless claims and the consumer confidence numbers. They'll come out today. The California numbers were abysmal, and these numbers are being dreaded as well, so watch out for that. OPEC and Russia, Saudi Arabia and Russia talks on Thursday would be important ones, and the G20 energy ministers meet on Friday. So from an oil perspective as well, the next 2 days are very, very crucial. Asia, well, we've spoken about this, that the volumes in our markets have thinned down. The volumes in Asia ex-Japan have thinned down considerably. So while we've had a bit of an uptick in a lot of Asian markets, the volumes are very, very low. Keep that at the back of your mind. The trades are not happening on very high volumes. Having said that, by virtue of what the US markets did yesterday, and maybe the long weekend as well, a bit of a mixed picture with a bias towards slight bit of green in Asia and the SGX too. Now, stop believing that the SGX is a real indicator of what will happen during the course of the day. So what happens from the start is one thing. This is the picture that SGX is showing. But the key is what happens during the course of the day is very, very important to determine, simply because there are two factors that might work against the bulls today. One, the possibilities of an extended lockdown, and these conversations have now started happening for another 14 odd days in a lot of areas in the country, might actually dampen the spirits or sentiment around an uptick. And keep in mind, I personally think it's very difficult for traders to have really large, long or short positions ahead of the long weekend. We also have a Tuesday holiday, by the way. So I doubt that there'll be very large positions taken over. And therefore, if people were long, I find it difficult to presume how is it that very large long positions will be continued going into the weekend. Strange things happen, but this is my personal view. FIs though bought big time in trade yesterday. We had a large number, the largest, 1943 crores, the highest number since November 26, 2019. So that's probably good news. And frankly, if you look at the last couple of days, there have been some positive numbers. 741 crores yesterday, or rather day before yesterday, 1943 crores provisionally yesterday as well. So FIs have turned on the taps, even though DIs pulled out yesterday. Let's wait and watch if this lasts. Now, very quickly, in a day like this, what are the stocks that you should monitor in this session? Two or three updates that have come in which are important. Titan, they gave an update saying that the revenue for the jewelry division declined by 5% during the quarter, while other businesses' revenue grew about 42%. However, what they said, which is that consequent to the serious disruptions in operations in March, revenue growth for the quarter and consequently for the year has been impacted severely. That shows what the impact of that minimal lockdown period in March was. Imagine what will happen in the April to June quarter, because the whole of April might be a lockdown. Marico too gave an update and they said that they see low single-digit decline in domestic volumes for quarter four. However, they did see edible oils and the foods business see a sharp uptake due to stocking up that happened prior to the lockdown. So difficult to say how their quarter four numbers would look like, and maybe consumption might still be in a slightly better spot. Staples consumption as opposed to discretionary consumption like in the likes of Titan. Fresh short positions were seen in a lot of cement counters like ACC, Ambuja, and Ramco, and therefore this pocket will be in focus. And I would watch out, viewers, keep in mind, I'll watch out for the diagnostic companies. The news came out when the markets were on yesterday. The Supreme Court has said that all COVID-19 tests have been done for free. Initially, the government had allowed for 4,500 rupees to be charged. Private labs were set up, were testing. Now this is to be done for free. It should be a bit of a dampener for those companies as well. So these are the limited things that I should keep an eye out for as you go into trade today. Have a good day ahead.
The union to secure your future is here. Andhra Bank and Corporation Bank are now Union Bank of India,